push through and punch through
a vision with passion,
a vision with passion. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to Purpose by Design podcast. I'm Pamela Hinkle. Thank you for being here again. And you are going to be so glad that you are here. Today, I have another amazing guest and someone I consider to be a friend, and her name is Judy Herman. And we are so excited, Judy, to have you on the broadcast today. I know you are full of wisdom and advice for all of us, and we are just ready to peel it back like an onion and receive from you. So would you introduce yourself? Tell us about you.
I'm so glad. Thanks, first of all, Pamela. It is such an honor to be here for sure. I consider you a soul sister. My name is Judy Herman, and I'm an author, and I'm a counselor and a speaker. And I'm licensed in the state of Tennessee and Georgia. I'm expanding my speaking skills, and Pamela and I are in the same group, and we've learned a lot of things from the same mentor, Les Brown. So I can go into a lot of things. I've been counseling for several years. I have a private practice in Chattanooga, in the greater Chattanooga area in Tennessee. And I also do consulting. I love to write and speak. And I have 5 grandchildren.
Wow.
And I have a lot of stories that are in my book, but we can get into that later. But is there any more that I needed to share about that, Pamela?
Oh, that's wonderful. And isn't being a grandparent just the most amazing thing on the planet?
Oh my gosh, it is definitely divine invitations. It's a divine season of life. There is nothing that thrills my soul. I mean, when you become a parent, that's one thing, and you have so much love that just flows out of you to your kids. But then there's something about that grandparent stage that is remarkable.
It is remarkable. I agree 100%. I'm with you. Well, Judy, I asked if you had a billboard that was present and could be up on the roads today, what would it say?
I pondered that question, Pamela, and you know what? I would envision a billboard that has some kind of an image that would represent freedom, because I use this acronym in my book of breathing in fresh air. But I think what it would say, I actually wrote it down, and there's a lot of things I might say. It might be feeling felt is the most wonderful gift you can give to another. I think that might be it. I've got a lot of other phrases that I might use too.
Feeling felt. I love that. Feeling felt.
It's a basic human need that we have in our relationships. And when we can give that to another, and when we can receive that, that really fills us as human beings. I think a lot of people don't feel felt. So, or I might say something like, you are so worth this journey. Or I would say something like, you are deeply loved and valued, and you have what it takes to get beyond messy relationships.
Yes. Oh, I love that. So you're going to have like an onslaught of billboards.
Probably an onslaught of billboards, but I know there's supposed to be so many words you use, right? And it has to be quick enough for you to pass by.
It'll be like going into Branson or Las Vegas. There'll just be one of Judy's billboards after another. Love it. Well, Judy, your story is amazing. And as I sat listening to your story one of the evenings when we were in class together, and you were sharing and sharing, I was really touched because you're an overcomer. I mean, you really have pressed through some hard things, and you could have hid behind your titles, behind your degrees. You could have been intimidated or even scared. And I'm sure some of those things you dealt with, and you'll talk to us about it, but you could have said, I can't talk about this. I can't be real and transparent. Here I am, a therapist. I have this, I have this, I have this, I have this degree. I can't have a messy relationship.
Yeah.
And yet you were just so liberated to just come out of the shell and be real, which personally for me Judy, it's endeared me to you
Oh,
because you're a real person.
mm,
And I feel like if I had something going on in my life, that I could talk to you and not just get a textbook talking head answer,
mhm.
but that you really feel, I would feel felt by you.
Oh, Pamela,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I so appreciate that. I so appreciate that. And this is a journey, right? We don't just do this and arrive, because all the things you said hide behind the letters of your name, and also being too scared or, shamed. I've been to all those at different stages of my life. The first time, so part of my story, if you wanted to go a little bit, kind of know who is
Yes.
this woman who's a
Yes.
therapist. So I didn't always used to be a therapist. Being a therapist was my second career, but I can honestly say I've spent basically my entire adult life trying to figure out relationships and making them work.
Mm.
Thus, I've got 5 grandkids, I've got 4 grown children, and I come from a family line of four people, 4 siblings, with each family generation. So when I got married at 22 to my first husband, and you just don't, your brain's not totally online, by the way, when you're 22 years old. It's not totally online until you're like in your mid 20s and beyond. So we all make these decisions, right? And then we just don't have the insight. But I was carrying a whole lot of shame. And so my first kind of hitting that wall of, what am I going to do here? It happened, and I had an experience of shame as a teenager, and that my husband didn't know about. And there was a time in my life, Pamela, and I am a Christian, so it's kind of like it came out of the clear blue. The Holy Spirit brought some scripture to my mind to confess your faults one to another. But this was felt deeply within my soul. I woke up one day and I had these 2 little girls, and I thought, I can't do this. I cannot live this fake life. So when I crossed over into being real, it was a huge risk for me. Well, ever since that time, and just to kind of get you cued in without telling you the whole nitty gritty of my story, I got involved with being a volunteer, pro-life, in the pro-life ministry. And I volunteered for several years as post-abortion recovery director. And that was actually a catalyst, Pamela, for me to realize, wow, there's a lot of people out there that are hurting. But not only that, it tuned me into my areas of giftedness, and then becoming a counselor, because I had, at the time I decided to go into studying, I mean, they had to go back into the archives of my undergraduate degree to get, because it was so much later, right? And I've got these 4 kids. That was, every decision that I've made has been a risk of, do I do this? Do I put this energy into it? So I'm very thankful to be this age and to be able to see this pattern, because it's necessary. It's necessary for our humanity to be more aware, to raise that level of awareness of what is going on undercurrent that's keeping us back, and then also to be intentional, and then take risks of growth. If you notice, and I use this in my book all the time, but this breathing in fresh air. What do we need to live? We need air to live. We need that. And that is a pattern if you start paying attention to it, because every stage of life gives us opportunity to be aware. So, but it's the shame and the guilt that will keep us stuck. And I have a couple chapters in my book that I address shame and guilt. It's such a strong thing. But anyway, I could go on and on. I want to pause a little bit because I want you to kind of absorb what
Yeah.
I've shared so far.
Well, as I said, your story is amazing. Would you be willing to expound a little bit more on your story? So we've kind of grabbed a hold of the fact that you have your children, your grandchildren, you started in this pro-life movement and kind of organizing, and you fell into, hey, I really feel pulled into to be a therapist, to be a counselor. And you started on this road. And here you are today. You have this book, Beyond Messy Relationships. So obviously you have some expertise from experience. Tell us a little bit more about Judy.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for asking. Yes, because I'm trying to fit into this box of theology, right? And I come from a very conservative Christian background, and it was so pretty well ingrained. And to live with the shame of having and I'm going to say it because there's probably some folks that are listening that to experience a pregnancy loss and abortion, and you don't really realize the impact of that. So when I came to that point of realizing it, and how much deep denial I had been in, that to break through that and to go through and get some help with that post-abortion recovery, it has been remarkable. It's been transformative. And I've got to tell you that going through not just the guilt over all of that, but also the grieving, realizing, okay, this was a real child. I named my child, had a memorial service. And so it's been a real thing. But through that, I realized that it gave me such an appreciation to go through that healing, to appreciate my own 4 living children. And then when I was writing my book, Beyond Messy Relationships, so the first marriage ended after 30 years, but the second marriage started, and I was in a place of dancing, right? And because I'd lived in so much grief for so long, and connected with my dance partner. So we got married. So through that second marriage, it was like my second husband and I were birthing this book. And I was not, and it was a beautiful thing because he was so supportive, such a partner. And what man would allow their wife to write such darkness about their lives? So the story is that my second husband, had bipolar disorder, and he was the highest functioning man you could imagine. We had years together, but 4.5 years into the marriage is when it just took me off guard. I experienced that he was in a season of psychosis. And so that was a jolt for me. But Beyond Messy Relationships was conceived out of that. And so that's the story. I had to write my story, and I had to write it in such a way. I did get some remarkable coaching. Marion Roach Smith, who's a memoir writer. Well, it's not just a memoir of my intense and dramatic story, but I also show up as a therapist at the beginning of each of the chapters, so that people who read it, they're not just reading this, but they're able to take the substance and apply it and really gain some insight and wisdom. I want to pause there for a moment too, because I know this is pretty intense too, what I'm sharing. And because some of your listeners might hear this and they might feel this gut punch.
Yes.
I really want to take time and honor that. And I deal with not just post-abortion recovery, and I deal with death, yes, and divorce and post-divorce and remarriage. I deal with the loss of loyalty with your family, the intensity of psychosis. So right now too, I want to share with you, if you're going through that kind of intensity as a listener and you're hearing my story, I want you to know that there's life beyond the messes, and you are so worth it. And get some help. Make sure you don't do this by yourself, because you need people. You need to feel felt, whether that's a counselor, whether that's a post-abortion program in a pregnancy center. Get some help, because you are so worth it. And it doesn't define you. The past doesn't define you. So I just wanted to kind of pause and make sure the listener is being cared for as I share my story.
Judy, that is beautiful. And I love the fact that you pulled in here and said, get help. Because so many people, women and men, I can only speak as a woman and as a mom and as a wife and as a grandmother and as a leader, right? Like we feel like we shouldn't need help. I can't ask for help. I help everybody else. but you hit it right on the head. It's okay to not be okay. And there are things and times when we need help. Wow.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Before we move on to some other aspects of you and your platform and what you're doing now, is there anything else in your story that you want to share?
I do want to share because I know that there's some folks that are dealing with real intense things in their lives. And on the outside, they may have the letters behind their name. Actually, a lot of folks that I counsel with are leaders, entrepreneurs, other therapists, in fact. And so I guess what I want to say is what I'm going through right now, and having gone through 2020, gone through this pandemic, I know a lot of us have lost our marriages, our relationships, our careers, but I stand before you today and I have that. So the catalyst for me writing the book, there was a time when my second husband read it, the manuscript. Oh, I got to tell the story. This is kind of funny. It's kind of a funny story in a way, because I was writing the manuscript and my writing coach said, Judy, don't share your manuscript with any family members because that was going to influence, right, what I might try to please or whatever, or change the story. I wanted it to be my authentic experience and story that I was sharing. So when the manuscript was finished, or Marion said to me, she said, don't share it with anybody that you live under the same roof with, depend on food, shelter, and clothing, or have sex with. So my husband, my second husband, sat and read the manuscript and tears flowing down his eyes. And he said, Judy, and we hugged each other because I was just really like concerned. I mean, he had recovered in between his psychotic episodes, but they had been traumatic. Okay, we're talking 6 weeks for the first one. And then there's this period when the brain is so much on fire, like it needs this period of a slowing down. And so it's kind of like in between those episodes, we really couldn't work on the marriage or even that recovery between the two of us. But he was supportive of me writing this book in a ways that just blew my mind. So he said to me, he said, maybe this will keep me from getting sick again. Now, at this time, when I wrote this book, the catalyst for it was the second episode. He had one in 2014, another one in 2017. So I stand before you today, and I don't know when your listeners are going to hear this, but it's now 2021 in the spring. And, but 2020, he had another episode. His brother passed suddenly, COVID, all these things. And I'm just telling you, he's not come back. So I stand before you having gone through 40 years of marital experience, lots of trauma, but I'm here and I'm letting my voice be heard. And I want to honor anyone who is struggling with a mental illness. I want to help anyone who is also living with a person who has a mental illness. One thing I want you to know, if you are caring for someone, you cannot do for others what only they can do for themselves. Okay. The stories in the book is pretty intense, but again, if you read the intense story of a therapist, usually therapists that write books, Pamela, they're writing the intense and dramatic stories of everybody else. But sometimes it just helps to read somebody else's story. And then you can say, wow, okay, maybe I'm not so bad after all.
I love it. That is great. And, you know, being transparent and sharing your story and letting, as I said, that is what drew me to you. There wasn't any, you know, shake and bake, whip and chill. It was like, this is who I am. This is what I've gone through. And this is why I wrote the book. And this is why I do what I do. Just amazing. You're amazing.
I want to share something else because me writing the book at the time that I did write it, Pamela, without the knowledge that any of us would be going through this pandemic and experiencing this level of stressors, without any idea that my brother-in-law, my ex-husband now, but his only family would come down with cancer, not having any idea. This book is still true, even in the status that I am in. And actually the audio production of the book, and Heidi Hansing was the audio narrator for the dramatic and intense part. And I'm the one that shows up as a therapist at the beginning of each of the chapters, but she made the book come alive with her drama. But it was at the time when I was facing that truth of, oh, here I am, the age I'm at. I'm not partnered, no one, it's like I'm dealing with all of this, but to be then reminded and to have this book in my ear and read it out loud, I'm telling you, it has been, little did I know the impact it would have on me personally, and also the impact that it has on other people.
Right. Well, I think this would be a great place. I'm going to switch our questions just a little bit because we have really been camping on your book already. So rather than backtracking and saying, okay, tell us about your platform and then, add your book in, why don't you start with telling us about your book and then just flow into it from there about what you're doing. Tell us about your platform, about being a therapist, about being a public speaker. Just share with our listeners who you are and what you do.
Well, here's the thing. I love what I do as a therapist, right? And when I was before the pandemic, I had this beautiful office, and I was within the four walls of my counseling office and speaking mainly, well, a lot doing relationship therapy. I am trained, for some of your listeners might be aware of Gottman therapy, the Gottman method, and also imago therapy. There's so much transformation that goes on. And then also those that were coming to me were women that had troubled marriages. And so as a couples therapist, I have to really be authentic, right? Because if there's some toxicity and power over dynamics going on, I cannot enable that as a therapist, right? So I realized that I'm going to make somebody mad. And so many people come into couples therapy and they think, and it makes it worse if they're in a very toxic relationship. The difference between individual therapy versus couples therapy, the couple is the client, right? And if you've got, if you're in a marriage and you come to a therapist and you say, well, fix my spouse, if only they didn't this or that, that's not couples therapy. No, couples therapy is when you're both in this dance together. You co-create the relationship. What are you going to do to be aware of how you are co-creating the mess? Okay, so I needed to share that first of all. As now, for a few years, it's like my walls are getting a little closed in. Now, I'm not saying physically. I love my office. It was a 300 square foot office. But I have this vision of speaking to those who won't ever meet me through therapy or will maybe meet me through my book. But I wanted to get my message out. So actually going through COVID, and I did let go of my four walls of my counseling office. I do outdoor therapy now. I love it, love it, love it. But I'm getting to the point where I love what I do, and I've learned so much. In fact, my clients, I'm telling you, my clients have given me courage to write as authentically and as I mean, if I didn't know that other people were going through some intensity in their own lives, like I have been blessed to know as a therapist over the years, I don't know if I would have the courage to write my book. But it's collectively, I have learned so much from my clients for many years. So where I'm at right now, my platform is mainly people who come to me for therapy or consulting are, entrepreneurs, other therapists, people in leadership. But my message is I'd like to really reach the mental health community and also other therapists. I have so we're in people helping positions, and I want to make sure that the people helpers are well, full, and vibrantly authentic themselves, because we all go through stuff. It's universal. We will go through stuff.
Absolutely. I loved what you said about the people helpers. making sure that the people helpers are in a place to help people. I mean, mentally, internally in that place, and giving them a safe zone where they can come undone,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
That's powerful. And I can tell that you're great at it.
Oh, thank you.
Just tell
Thank
that you're
you.
great at it. And that's really what your book is all about as well, is being yourself, transparent, telling your story. But I loved what you said, that you come in as the counselor or therapist to each section. So you have this story, the ups and downs, the ins and outs of it all, the hurts, the pains, but then you kind of sit back and you give that therapeutic eye and explain it and give understanding, which is huge for people to understand why I do what I do, what was happening, what was my brain firing at that moment. And so to me, your book is your story, but it's also a textbook, Judy, of walking away with not just saying that was an amazing story, but walking away with some nuggets of truth and understanding how the human brain works, how that psyche works. So there was like a wealth of knowledge in there to me,
Mm.
that I walked away with a better therapeutic understanding of even myself, but those
Mm.
around me. Is that part of your intention with the book?
It's yeah, you hit the nail on the head, and I'm so glad you said it's like a textbook. I really do want to get my book into graduate schools that are training other therapists. I'm working with an intern now, and she's wonderful. You know, when you start working with somebody that's learning the craft of counseling at the beginning, and then you just don't even realize, and it's probably with anything, but you don't realize how much you need to teach or know, you know. But I do know that there's a lot of therapists, they start out and they're all excited. And then because of the system of insurance and reimbursements and this and that and all the intensity, or they can get really burnt out. And this is a profession that does that. And I know also pastors do. People in people helping professions, they really need to nurture their own hearts, their own souls, deal with their things, because it's like they experience this lonely at the top, right? They don't really trust anybody else to share what they do need to share and surround themselves and get de-isolated.
Yeah.
So for sure. Yeah. And so also I have created add-on resources. I really wanted to put it in the book, but it was just a little too much, I think, for some, at least my beta readers told me that, that to have like questions to ponder. So people who do get my book, and you can get it anywhere books are sold, but you can go to my website and then you know, fill out a little form to get additional resources, but it will go with each chapter so that you could use it as for a book club. You could use it to do your own personal reflection. You could use it as dialogue questions between you and your spouse, you and your child, adult child. So there's a lot of resources also.
Yeah, you are the full meal deal supersized.
Yes. Would you like fries with your meal?
Fries, would you like those fries? You have given so much depth there. I think that is awesome. Well, I wanted to ask you a question um, in regards to you and what you've been doing on Facebook, because you have taken such time to really dive into Facebook Lives and being a parent of what it is that people are needing. When you get ready to go live, what drives you for that? Before we kind of talk about some of the different the videos that you've done, what drives you? Like, do you plan it out, or do you just go with the flow? You're going to go live here in a little bit. I'm going to get to go with you. Do you
Yeah,
plan
that's
it
good.
out, or what do you?
Well, so I've been doing this at the time of this recording anyway for about 3 weeks. Now, what I was inspired, now I've got a bunch of other videos that I did a couple of years ago, and I was showing up every week. And somehow I got off track. And I'm telling you that when you live with someone who does have a severe mental illness, or if you live with a spouse and there's a lot of tension, there's only so much you can really do to get yourself out there. So what drives me now is our wonderful mentor, legendary Les Brown. There's something that he said, Pamela, he said, speakers speak. Duh. Of course, speakers speak. And I realize that I'm just going to speak. I'm just going to do it. Your question is, do I just do it on the fly or do I plan? I'm getting to the point where I'm planning more. Actually, what I'm wanting to do is do some more like themes from my book. There's so much teaching just in the beginnings of each of those chapters. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, people may not even take the time to read my book. I'm just going to put it out there and at least do the teaching part, whatever. So that's kind of, I have a lot of content, a lot of content. My problem is, well, it has been, it's no longer, because I'm going to start thinking more positively, is getting myself organized, right? There's some people that are natural at this. This is one thing that, and I do deal with other issues, like, you know, so many people that are entrepreneurs have distractions and all these ideas and have problems with, well, yeah, we all have, like, a lot of us have adult attention deficit disorder. I'm going to tell you, I struggle with that. So I hope that answers your question.
Oh, it does, because you are so natural when you're doing it. And one of the questions that I sent to you said on a Facebook Live, you said, I'm looking so that I actually quote you accurately here. You had some powerful and simple techniques to get beyond messy relationships. And you shared a little bit about that. But for our listeners here today, I want to know, what are some of those techniques?
Okay, here's the technique in a really Reader's Digest version. And I'm going to actually do this because this is something, Pamela, we can all do together. The techniques are awareness. Write down awareness, actually. If you're at a point where you can write this down, not driving, those of you that are not driving or driving, don't do this, but write down awareness and circle the I. Okay. So awareness is a lifelong journey. Okay. Like I said, in our mid-20s, our brains aren't totally online. We become a mom, we have this awareness. So our awareness to ever, stage of life continues, and we need to continue to be aware and realize there's so much we are not aware of. So awareness is the first. Intentionality, circle the I, but write down the word intentional or intentionality. I, and we need to make, like, we can become aware. If we don't do anything about it, we're not going to, right? So taking time to be intentional, to pray, to meditate, to take a long bath if you need to, just to kind of, because we go in, day out with too much busyness and worries. And then the third thing is risks of growth, and circle the R when you write the word risk. Now, what I'm telling you, if you look at the letters that you circled, it spells air.
AIR. We circled the A in awareness, the I in intentionality, and the R in risk.
Now, I want you right now, just take a deep breath, Pamela, with me. And I'm going to just ring this bell because sometimes that helps. Okay. So take a deep breath in. And then slowly breathe out. So I want to share with you what happens when you do that about 3 times. When you do that for about 90 seconds, it slows things down and it raises that level of awareness. And we need that every single day, every moment. But do often evaluations of your life. What is my next level? What is my next? Because life's going to happen. Like COVID happened, we had to take some risks of growth. If you've lost your marriage, you're taking risks of growth. What is that? Tune into that. It's an invitation. It's divine invitation. So the acronym is AIR and breathing in, but also it grounds you in your present moment. And this is all we have right now, is our present moment. This is what living our life authentically, being in tune with this present moment and being grateful.
I love that. Awareness, intentionality, and risks. Being intentional has been a driving force in me for a couple of years now. I was at a homegoing, which is what I call a funeral, for a friend's mother who had passed away. And I learned so much about her mother, who I had known throughout the years, but I learned so much about her at her homegoing. And what I walked away from that homegoing with was this word: she lived her life on purpose. She was intentional about everything that she did. And it really was a changing point for me, where being intentional became something I was aware of, right? I became
Yes.
aware of being intentional at a greater level than I had prior to that experience. And I loved how you said that. And when I took that big, deep breath in and out and just was quiet for a moment, I could feel that grounding happening. So, to all those that you are listening, this works. And I can say it works from experience, but Judy's also telling you not just from experience, but from an education background as well, that these things work. And so when you're in an intense area of your life, whether it is a relationship that needs to get beyond being messy, or maybe it's the relationship with yourself that you have, or any situation that you are in, these three things will help you. So these are your wins, your takeaway from today: awareness, A; intentionality, I; and risks, R. Breathing in and out, and then being in the moment and reflecting on all three of those areas in that situation and in your life. What a huge bonus and message for us today, Judy. Thank you for that. Do you have time for me to ask you another question before we start?
Sure. Yeah, people are expecting me at noontime, but you know what? Let's just do it.
We're almost done.
We're fine. We're fine.
We'll have one more. From your unique perspective, what does purpose by design mean to you?
Oh, wow. Pamela, I'm so glad you asked that, because that is your motto and I love it. By design means to me that God has a plan, and that purpose is much bigger than we could ever imagine. And we were designed to come and be born at the time that we were, to the parents and family systems that we were born in. And all the messes that we've gone through in our lives are never wasted. All of the pain we've ever experienced is not in vain. And it is for purpose.
Yes.
Because you see, wow, that's like a powerful question, and one that I believe all of us as human beings need to ponder. What is our purpose? And what have I been through? What have I learned in life? I do want to share one other thing, because this is so common. It was when we get so caught up in, I wished I could have this or that or the other, and we focus on the past. And we parent even in the present because of our past, and we parent by way of guilt. You're missing out, because there's so much wisdom that comes from regret. So it's kind of, we need to dig into that soil, find where the buried treasure is in the midst of the ugliness, trauma, pain, messiness we've gone through. But there's wisdom and growth, and going back to purpose by design. I think that's what it is. It's like a treasure hunt. But let's talk about it with a therapist, and or read the book or something, but get started into, it's okay, that's in the past. We're going to learn and see what gems of treasure and wisdom there is, because the world needs to hear from you.
Yes. So we learn from our past. We learn from our mistakes. We don't let them make us bitter. We let them make us better. And then we pay it forward. That's what I'm hearing you say. We
Absolutely.
pay it forward, and it becomes part of our purpose by design. Not the bad stuff. The bad stuff happened, the things happen, but those pearls of wisdom that we can pull out of that can change us and accelerate us forward. Now we can share that with somebody else. I love that. That's exactly what you did and what you're doing. Oh, all right. Anything else that's on your heart that you want to make sure that you get to say or share before we wind down today?
I think you've asked some awesome questions, Pamela, and it has been, to me, a divine appointment just to be with you on the screen here. I just love you, and I consider you a soul sister, and I really appreciate this opportunity. And so thank you so much for the work you're doing. And yeah, and I guess people can find me,
Well,
right?
that's my last question is how do people find you? And this listeners, this is all in the description as well. So you can just look down and you'll see all the information on how to find Judy. But Judy, go ahead and share where people can track you down and connect with you.
Yes, and I do want to make sure that listeners have a free resource. So
Great.
you can go to my website, it's judycounselor.com, and there is a free relationship stress quiz, but I want to make sure that you have that. And also, so you can, if you're on Facebook, it's Judy K. Herman, Facebook, that's where I show up on my videos. I am on LinkedIn, Judy K. Herman. And I'm a little bit on Twitter, not very much, but it's best just to connect with me by those other ones, I suppose. I'm still learning all this social media stuff.
Well, that is great. Well, Judy, I have taken away so much wisdom today. Thank you for being here and sharing your heart. And to all of you that have been here today, I know that you are going to go get that book, support this wonderful woman and learn from her. And as always, I ask you to like and to subscribe and to share, because these messages need to get out so that people know that you love it and that we need more of this, but also you can reach a world that I can't reach and that Judy can't reach. So if you will start subscribing, sharing, liking, this word will get out to all the people out there that need it. My heater just turned on. I'm sorry if you hear that. I want to thank you for being here today. And I want to thank you to all the listeners and viewers. Remember, you have a divine purpose by design. So just go on out there and continue to be the salt and the light everywhere you go. Thank you for tuning in today, and blessings. Bye.
Bye-bye.